Screwing around. You gave me 46.5.
Yeah. How'd you do?
I don't know. I couldn't. I think I won, but the last one where I was betting it up, I won a lot of hands, and I kept losing a lot of hands, right? So I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Good blackjack, and then you lose.
Yeah, I had the blackjack, and then I had the pair of threes, and I had to split them, and I think I lost, and then I doubled one and lost it, right?
Yeah. So you cashed out your browns?
Yeah, I cashed out the 2 browns. I got this. Yeah, but the guy was like adamant that I'd take the stinking browns, right? Okay, 10, 20, 30, 40. Oh, you got 10 stacks? Okay.
Yeah.
Here. Okay, so I owe you 46.5. Here's 10.
Okay.
20, 30, 40.
That's another 7.
7. Okay, so 46.5.
Ed Thorpe came out with a book in 1962 called Beat the Dealer. It was a New York bestseller for months.
And he demonstrated in his book that the game of blackjack could actually be beaten.
And at the time he wrote his book, in 1962, blackjack was a very minor game in the casinos.
21 was always kind of looked at as the wives could play 21. The men would play craps and the wives could play the 21.
Craps was the game that was most popular in the Army during World War II.
Everybody was in the military liked to gamble. They either played craps or poker, and craps was a quicker game.
Thorpe made craps a minor game and blackjack the #1 game within a matter of a couple years.
Initially, it scared the industry. Overnight, from what I've read, the industry, they changed the rules and made the games much less attractive.
These rule changes went into place in 1964. They lasted 2 to 3 weeks. By the end of that period, every casino had gone back to the old rules because the public simply stopped playing the game.
They realized there was much more revenue that would be lost from the non-counters than would be lost to the counters if they changed the rules back to what they'd had before the introduction of Thorpe's book.
And as soon as a casino went back to the old rules, the people returned, they started making money again. This is when the casinos realized that card counting was probably one of the best things that ever happened to them.
It changed the face of gambling in the 20th century forever, and it made a lot of money for a lot of players and a lot of casinos as well.
Las Vegas has gone wild since about actually 1989. We've had something like 26 casinos open up.
There are about 8,000 or so blackjack tables in the United States right now. The average blackjack table earns about $200,000 or so per year from the casinos. So that's quite a bit of money we're talking about.
At its heart, though, the casino industry is two-faced. They themselves seem to only talk about the card counter problem.
But I think that they've realized 2 things. One, most people can't do it well enough to beat them for any significant amount of money. 2 is that for everyone that can, there are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, who have no clue. Again, that's what the casinos have to thank Dr. Thorpe and the people that came after him for, is letting it be known that this can be done. And a lot of people like to try it, but go partial, halfway.
Card counting at first, when you hear about card counting, you think like, oh, that's impossible. You gotta be like a Rain Man to be able to count cards. And you don't have to remember that at all. You don't have to like keep track of all the queens and the jacks, the tens, and know when there's a lot of queens left. You don't have to know that at all. You just have to know there's a lot of good cards left and not a lot of bad cards. And that's all the card counting is, counting good cards minus bad cards. So you learn that, and you realize, well, wait, this is really easy. It's just going like, I could just like count plus or minus 1 every card. And, you know, if the count's really positive, bet a lot. Yeah, it's that easy. It really is that easy, but it takes a lot of practice.
When I first started making this movie, I thought it would be a good idea if we had a sort of case study where we would watch someone learning how to count cards and then follow them trying to apply that knowledge in a real-world situation. But I couldn't find anyone willing to put in the necessary time, so I decided to do it myself. To start off, I wanted to learn everything that was available to the average person in books and on the internet, so I flew to Las Vegas and started to sort it all out.
Players have always met at the Gambler's Bookstore downtown, the Gambler's Book Club.
It's always been the place that you go. It's on any given day, at any given time, you don't know who will be in there. You don't know what kind of discussion will be going on in the corner. The old timers, the new guys, good group of people, and just all the latest. It's the center of the gambling universe.
Peter who works behind the counter there now, is a very knowledgeable person. Howard Schwartz is a walking encyclopedia of gambling knowledge. He knows just about everything and everybody.
Anybody interested in math is always going to be interested in probabilities. Anybody interested in probabilities is going to get into the area of gambling. Now he's going to choose an area. It could be roulette, the biased wheel effect. It could be the big 6 wheel. But it's more likely to be something beatable, something logical, something that they have fun with, something stimulating and challenging, and something that appeals to their ego and might make them some money. And so blackjack is the perfect game because it is one of those games that is beatable. Logic tells you that.
Well, you could tell them what effect this book had on the gambling world.
Well, Beat the Dealer was probably the most significant book of the 60s, and probably even today it sold probably more than 700,000 copies. It's a whole new generation of players has been. You know, the people don't even know the young players don't know who Thorpe is.
I first got interested in blackjack and card counting wholly by chance, you might say. I was teaching at UCLA in the 58-59 academic year, and my wife and I were looking for an inexpensive vacation. The salaries were rather low in those days, and so we decided over Christmas vacation to go to Las Vegas. One of the professors in the math department, a Robert Sorgenfrey, a topologist, told me about a very interesting paper in the Journal of the American Statistical Association by Baldwin, Canty, Maisel, and McDermott. There they presented a strategy for playing blackjack that would give the casino only about a 0.6% edge.
Blackjack's been around for about 100 years, more or less, in the form that we know it today. And up until about 50 years ago, it was played very poorly, and people guessed at the proper way to play it.
So in 1956, a group of mathematicians realized that, hey, this game, every hand that you have at least 3 decisions to make, and possibly 4. For instance, if you have, say for instance, a 6 and a 5, and the dealer has a 6 as an up card, well, I can elect to stand on that hand, I can double down on that hand, or I can hit that hand. If you have 2 cards of equal value, then you have a 4th option. You can do any of the 3 that I just mentioned, or you can split the 2 cards. And these mathematicians said, well, hey, wait a minute, there must be some optimum way to play.
That was before the computer age, and that group of 4 individuals unfortunately had to use calculators for their calculations.
They determined that the game was very, very close to even. And they published this fact along with the strategy that they had evolved. This came as a great surprise to many people because the prevailing wisdom was that the house had about a 4% advantage against best play. And the view as to what best play was at that time was really far off the mark.
I decided that I would risk $10 silver on this game when we got there and see what happened. So I copied their strategy down on some tiny cards, and went to the tables. So I played for about 20 minutes, and people looked at my card and laughed, thought, here's another fool with a system. And people were ground up at the table, and pretty soon I was the only player left. And after about another 20 minutes, I was down $8.50, and I finally quit. But the strategy did very well compared with everyone else.
The differences from their basic strategy in 1956 to the basic strategy you'll find in any blackjack book available today, there's barely a difference.
So when I got back to UCLA, I went to the stacks and got out the Journal of the American Statistical Association article and began to skim through it very quickly. And as I did, I realized that there would be probably a way to beat this game.
He asked the question, what would happen if I dealt the game of blackjack not from a 52-card deck, but a 51-card deck, from which, for example, we remove an ace, which is the card that we might think is most helpful for the player because of the 3-2 payoff on blackjack.
So you would start, for example, with a single deck, and you would remove one ace, and you would have your computer simulate 100 or 200 million hands and say, well, how did I fare with the ace missing versus how I did when the ace was there? And what you would find is that with the ace missing, your expectation was about 0.6% less than it was before. Removing that ace hurt you. If you were to do the opposite thing and, let's say, remove a 5 from the deck, start with a full deck and remove a 5, and then play 100 or 200 million hands, what you'd find is that removing that 5 helped you.
So his analysis showed that each and every card had its own sort of gravitational effect on the ever-changing advantage in the game of blackjack as more than one hand was dealt before reshuffling.
In the casino, we have games which are classified as dependent trials and games which are classified as independent trials. An independent game would be a game where the last hand or the last spin or the last toss does not influence the next hand, the next spin, or the next toss. Games which are independent would be games like dice, roulette, keno.
Blackjack's a little bit different story. And the reason why is we don't shuffle a deck each time like poker. We actually shuffle it and deal it out.
The essence of card counting is to be based on information about the cards you've seen that have left the pack. You have information about cards that remain to be played. A preponderance of tens and aces left in the deck favors the player. There are many reasons for this. I mean, the easiest one probably to understand is the fact that if you exchange naturals all day between the player and the player actually receives a bonus of 3-2 for his natural, a 2-card blackjack, and the dealer receives no bonus. So if you were to exchange naturals all day back and forth, I win 1.5 times my bet every time I get one. The dealer only gets 1 times my bet when he gets one, so at the end of the day I'll be far ahead. Conversely, a pack of cards that's rich in low cards favors the dealer, and an easy way to think about that is the dealer must hit until reaching a safety window, a safety zone of 17 through 21. So if he has a hand that's below that, let's say 16 or 15 in particular, low cards help him reach that safety window. So for card counting, the essence is that it correctly identifies when you should wager more. But the other aspect of card counting is it correctly identifies when you should deviate from this so-called basic strategy that the Baldwin group found. For example, if I know that the deck has a lot of tens and aces left, and the dealer offers me insurance, which I should never take. Insurance is a wager that the dealer's down card is a 10. If I know there are a lot of tens and aces left, I'll be more inclined to take that bet. And in fact, there are times when I should take that bet. That's a very important strategic departure for a card counter.
High-speed electronic computers were becoming moderately available. MIT had one called an IBM 704, which it shared with 30 New England universities. And so I taught myself to program that in Fortran, and I started computer calculations toward the end of '59. And I was done in the middle of 1960.
And he evolved a method for keeping track of certain characteristics of the deck. His method was called the 10 count, where he kept track of, in essence, the density of proportion of tens left in the deck.
What he found was that whenever the ratio of tens to non-tens, and he called non-10 value cards, he called them others. So he found that whenever the ratio of tens to others dropped to 2.0 others to each 10, the player has the advantage. A fresh deck, off the top of the deck, the ratio of others to tens is 2.25 to 1. And what the player would do, he would count backwards. There was 16 tens in a new deck, and there's 36 non-tens. So you count backwards. 36, 16, if you saw two non-tens, 34, 16, two tens, 34, 14. And you would, in your mind, be calculating these ratios, and whenever the ratio of others to tens dropped to 2.0 or less, then the player had the advantage, and he would make a large bet.
So it was actually quite a difficult count because you had to keep track of two different numbers. But then when 1966 came along, Thorpe came up with a revised version of his book, and in there he had a much, much simpler count. He had something called the high-low.
And this is the count I decided to use, the high-low. There are numerous counts out there, but the high-low seems to be the industry standard, so to speak. The values for the high-low are these. For every 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 you see, you count +1. For every 10 or ace that you see, you count -1. 7s, 8s, and 9s you just ignore. So the way to practice is you would take a deck of cards and you would start counting it down, keeping a running count based on those values. So it would go like this. -1, -2, -1, even, +1, +2, +3, +2, +3, +4, +3. And you have to practice until you can count down a deck very, very quickly. Now, in actual play with multiple decks, you also have to convert this running count into what's called a true count, which accounts for how many cards are left in play. Basically, you divide the running count by the number of decks that you see that are left to play, and you arrive at your two count. So if you had a running count of +6, say, and there were 2 decks left to play, you divide 6 by 2, and you'd arrive at a true count of +3.
What happened next was I decided to give a talk at the meeting of the American Mathematical Society in Washington, D.C. When I came to the room to give my talk, I found a very mixed audience, much different than the usual audience of mathematicians. There were quite a few mathematicians there, but there were also people with sunglasses and Florida-style clothing on. And remember, it was January in Washington, and the snow was 20 inches deep outside. So there were obviously gambling types as well as intellectuals there. So when I finished giving my talk, and I said I have a few copies that I can distribute to you, they rose as a mass and moved forward aggressively. And so I started to hand out the copies, and then I finally just gave up and pitched them onto the table and went out the back door as rapidly as I could so that I wouldn't be besieged by all these characters. Well, the casinos more or less threw down the gauntlet to me too, put up or shut up. They said things like, we send taxis to the airport for people like you. We went out to Reno to play. It was during spring vacation of 1961. We played a total of about 20 hours, and the theory said, doing what we did, we should win about $10,000. And we actually won $11,000.
Dr. Thorpe changed the world with this book. This fellow, Lawrence Revere, changed it even more so by making Blackjack with his charts, computer generated by a fellow named Julian Braun, an IBM specialist back in the 60s. He simplified the game. And out of Revere sprung Arnold Snyder, Stanford Wong, Kenny Houston.
Professional Blackjack by Stanford Wong.
Arnold Snyder's Black Belt.
$1 Million Blackjack by Ken Houston. Blackjack for Blood writes very clearly for every level player Great charts, easy to read, stories, flamboyant experiences, a lot of good advice. Houston's own point count and then make it what you count, emulate. A book that excited and a lot of innovative.
So I read all these books. I mean, I read just every reputable thing about blackjack I could get my hands on. And it turns out that there are many other practical things you have to take into account besides basic strategy and the high-low count if you're going to succeed.
There's some very important things you have to do. Like you have to look at the exact game the casino is offering you, the exact rules, the penetration that they're giving you, your bet variation.
The reality of blackjack is that the fewer the number of decks and the greater the penetration, the more valuable the game.
Probably the most important single factor is the number of decks in use. In a single deck, if you remove, let's say, 1 5, then if you compare the number of aces and tens that are left to the number of, let's say, low cards, 2 through 6 that are left, and normalize to a per deck basis, you already have 1 extra high card per deck, just removing a single 5. And in fact, in almost all situations, you already have the advantage. Now in the 8-deck case, you have obviously 8 times as many high cards and 8 times as many low cards. Now if you remove 1 single 5, clearly removing just 1 card from 8 decks is not going to have nearly the same effect as removing 1 card from a single deck. So the fluctuations or the volatility or the opportunities, if you will, are much greater in a single deck.
But then we hit the other problem. It's much easier for the casinos to identify a card counter in a single deck game. The reason for this is that the advantage goes up and down very quickly. And if you have your bets going up and down just as quickly as the advantage is going up and down, you are going to stick out. You are really going to stick out like a card counter. There are no games that really are comparable to single deck game for the amount of the advantage that a card counter can theoretically get. The 2-deck game is much more similar to the shoe game than it is to the 1-deck game. For that reason, you don't have the same kind of heat in a 2-deck game that you have in a 1-deck game. But it is an excellent game.
Another key factor would be penetration. And what I mean by that is how far down into the pack does the dealer deal? Clearly, if you only deal out a few cards, let's say I'm playing a single deck game and I only deal out 5 cards, and then I say stop, what's the chance that I have, 2 extra high cards? The chance is not very high. But if I deal out, half of the deck, the chance goes up that I'd have 2 extra high cards. And as I deal out more and more in the deck, there are less cards remaining. So the information that I have about whether there's, for example, if there's 2 extra high cards and there's only 10 cards left, that's much more important and much more valuable to me than if there's 2 extra high cards and 50 cards left.
In a shoe game, you would like to see 75% penetration. If it's 6 decks, you'd like them to deal 4.5. Now, technically, you'd like them to deal 5 or 5.5. 4.5 would be considered acceptable, and some counters would accept 4.
Well, I decided to play exclusively 2-deck games, and 2-deck games where I get at least 60% penetration. That is, I want the dealer to place the cut card about right here or deeper, and deal out at least 60% of those 2 decks. Now, along with this, I needed to look for favorable rules for me, such as I want the dealer to stand on soft 17, and I want the ability to double down after I've split cards. There are many other rules to look for, but the most important thing I learned was to look for excellent penetration. Now, I didn't have a lot of money to play with, so I decided to use as a stake the $5,000 that I had set aside in the budget for music for this movie, and win or lose, document what happened. So I got the $5,000 in cash, and I went back to Las Vegas to play.
two-deck games have sort of had a resurgence of popularity in the past 4 or 5 years here, and there are quite a few good two-deck games around. There are very few good one-deck games.
I think that the opportunities these days for the mid-range player are better than they've ever been. I mean, a green chip or a multiple green chip, $25 to $150 player. I don't think those players have ever had a better day, because there are so many bettors that are strictly black chip bettors that they can blend in with, and nobody's going to pay a bit of attention to them.
With my $5,000 stake, I decided to use a 1 to 8 betting spread using green chips. So what this means is that I bet $25 a hand in unfavorable or neutral situations, and up to $200 a hand in highly favorable situations. And I would determine how much to bet on each hand according to the true count. That is, I would bet the true count in greens. So let's say I had a true count of +6. I would bet 6 green chips or $150.
Everyone has to have their own limits and tolerance as to what risk they're willing to accept when they play blackjack. In your situation, you've gone off with $5,000 and selected a betting limit of 25 to 200, a 1 to 8 betting range using green chips. The way you did it, you had a risk of probably something like 25% chance of losing the whole $5,000.
A lot of people have to think about what that means. Risk of ruin means losing all your money.
I did a study once that showed that roughly it requires about 3 months of full-time play before you can be assured of being ahead in blackjack. And a lot of people don't appreciate that, and I think a lot of neophyte counters go in more or less thinking it's a money-making machine, which it is if you can last. But if you bet too much at the beginning and you go belly up and you don't have any more money to wager, basically, you know, it's a done deal.
The bankroll that I would require to feel comfortable with that particular game would provide me with the risk of ruin, in other words, losing all my money, of 5% or less. That's what I would require. And that would work out to be somewhere around $37,000.
What a card counter tries to do is he tries to look at the long run. In the long run, what happens is the advantage that you have is always there per hand, and the standard deviation is sort of a scatter around that. And over time, standard deviation can almost be considered luck. If over time, luck cancels out.
So I went out this morning and I played at the Imperial Palace and I lost $300 right away. Count was good. I was up a little bit, had 2 hands of 125 each, split one of those, lost them all, and then lost a little, count stayed high, lost a little bit more, and at any rate. So ended up losing the 300 that I bought in with, and then didn't find another good game. Went and took a break, played some poker, watched football, had 8, and then so I was down 1,700 at that point for most of the day. Did well in poker, luckily. That was just my money. And then on the way back, had a really good run. Won. Tropicana still looks like a good game, but it's not. It's crowded, so that I didn't play there. Went to Monte Carlo and found pretty good penetration and won like. Geez, what was it? A couple $100 right away, and took the tram to the Bellagio, won $500. Went to the Flamingo and won like $150. Went to the Imperial Palace and won like $270. So I think I'm down just $500. I think I had like a $900 win if that all adds up right. So not bad, which makes me feel totally much more in the game because I just felt despondent. It's a roller coaster, but you feel good when you win. So I'm going to write it down. So down at $500. That's not that bad.
I would say what's going on right now on the internet is a major development from the the card counters standpoint.
We have people in the major casino areas who are hired to update all of the table conditions, how many decks they're using, what are the rules of the game, what are the betting limits, is the penetration good, does this look like a good game for me as a card counter.
So, it's Sunday night, and how are you feeling? How did you do?
A little worn out. I lost again, down 1,500 again. And just feeling exhausted, but I'm going to keep at it. But I was, so I went to the Paris, lost 200. The Bellagio won about $1.25, and then stopped and came back and then lost like $4.25. But I'm playing well, but it's just, this is what it's like, so, but I'm really feeling it's not feeling fun anymore, it's really feeling like a chore.
What were you saying about doing this as a living?
I'd never do it. It's really, it could seem like a chore right now. Maybe my spirits will be different if, if we start winning, but it just seems like terrible. I just think I'd rather make movies, which I thought was hard, but this is just, it's hard. And I gotta hand it to the people who do it, because it's, man, it's just emotionally, it's for me, and playing with money that we could be spending on, music for this movie. The thought of that money not being there and not having good music is I don't know, it's rough. So, it's tough. I don't know if I'll ever even do it again. We'll see. It's fun, and it's the only way to play blackjack, that's for sure. But I don't know if I really want to go here for 11 days again and make a serious run with that kind of money. I guess I'm just not used to playing with that kind of cash, $5,000.
That was the first one I was able to really bet it up, right? So I had 3 hands of 5,000 about 4 times out there, and that's just a big tip off for them. And
right.
And then the next shoe, after they shuffle, they cut it right at 2.5 deck, you say. So
roughly,
yeah. That's a very clear sign that they don't like you.
Right.
Right. So I don't know. We definitely can't play on this shift anymore. I don't know. I would think that the odds of getting kicked out if we play again are really high.
If we can identify them, and we have no doubt that they're card counters, and if we have the power to bar them, I think you should bar them.
One of the biggest indications is bet spreads. So one of our floormen will say, I got a guy over here. He's spreading his checks. He's going from 1 unit to 15 units on a shoe game.
A card counter needs to be able to bet more when he has the advantage. That's the essence of card counting, is when you're at a disadvantage, you bet a little. When you have the advantage, you bet much more. If you're not allowed to make that what's called a bet spread, you will not have the advantage in that game.
Probably the main thing that's come along since Thorpe in terms of advancement for card counters is all the work that's been done in terms of getting away with it in the casinos. And the first person to really do anything along that line was Ian Anderson.
And he wrote a book that essentially told people how to look like a gambler.
When I was banned from all the casinos early in my career, I went back to the drawing boards and I thought about it. And I watched players and I watched high rollers. And I realized that in order to get away with counting, you must change your behavior so that you emulate the behavior of a high roller. Gamblers tend to bet more when they're winning. They tend to chip up or add a chip to their bet when they've won a hand. They might reduce their bet when they've lost a hand, but they certainly wouldn't increase their bet on a losing hand for the most part. Counters, on the other hand, would methodically bet 1 unit, 1 unit, 1 unit, 1 unit, and suddenly they'd bet 5. And then they'd lose that hand, and they'd bet 10.
You have to play camouflage. You have to raise your bets somewhat gradually. You want to look like a gambler, maybe parlaying or just raising your bets when you win.
The best blackjack players that I know marry 2 skills together. One is they have the fundamental technical skills of card counting. And the second is they have the artistry to be able to incorporate that particular tactic into an overall persona.
Ian Anderson was really a much more consummate con artist.
I believe I could take a good actor and teach that person to be a good card counter much easier than I could take a mathematician and teach him how to be a accomplished blackjack player.
Where are we going? Caesars.
Caesars?
If not Hilton, then Caesars. I mean, I can't think of where else.
What's that Frontier?
I don't know. I mean, they have a blackjack game. We should go check it out. It's only across the street from the Desert Inn anyway. Desert Inn's kind of cool. You know. Do you want to bet it up at DI?
I'll put it up there.
Okay.
It's a different. They've been bought and sold like 3-4 times in the last several years.
I know. I mean, I'd heard that their surveillance was, you know, it used to be top notch, but now it's like, you know, very hit or miss. So.
I don't want to go anywhere that you've been hard luck with.
Okay. That's probably just Leeds Hilton.
What does it mean, hard bark?
Where they read this trespassing act to you and they say, you know, if you show up again, we have the right to have you arrested.
If you return a second time, you are forever barred from entering this casino property. If you come back a third time, you are subject to arrest. That doesn't say that there. I've memorized it because I've heard it enough times.
Casino executives a lot of times will view counters the same way they view cheaters. They just don't want somebody who can come in there and have the odds in their favor. The Nevada Supreme Court has actually said not only is card counting not cheating, they've gone one step further and said if a player takes advantage of a dealer accidentally showing a down card, that's not cheating either. The law in Nevada is the common law, which is that any business can exclude anybody for any reason unless it's specifically prohibited by statute. You can't kick out people on the basis of race. You can kick out people because they're wearing green hats, and you don't like people who wear green hats.
If you do the other tricks we do, the other things discourage the player, like cutting the deck and things of this nature, well, you're also cutting the deck on every other player at the table. And there's going to be a lot more revenue lost to your players that are not counting cards because they're going to get less hands per hour. The only game that we unplug X number of minutes an hour is a 21 game. Well, and Baccarat as well. But a slot machine, we don't, while you're playing it, you're playing the slot machine, and we say, just a minute, let me unplug that thing. And then about 2 minutes later, okay, now go ahead. We don't do that in dice. We don't unplug it. In blackjack, we unplug it. We unplug it whenever it's time to shuffle. So the more frequently the shuffle, the more time spent shuffling is times that the game's unplugged. Granted, the card counter doesn't make any money while the game's unplugged, but guess what? Neither do we when the game's unplugged. So it's not a good thing.
I'm going to go to Bally's, I'm going to go to Paris, I'm going to go back to Monte Carlo now that they've changed shifts, and then I'm going to go downtown, look at the Golden Nugget, look at Lady Luck, and then maybe go to Palace Station and see if that's any good. Because they say it's good on the internet, so wish me luck.
You know, the cat and mouse game between the card counters and the casinos, it's a game that sometimes gets out of hand, and I know lots of stories of people that have been at least detained, card counters who have been detained. I mean, I've been a part of it. There have been some bad stories of people that have gotten hurt.
At the Las Vegas Hilton, I was beaten up by 2 of their security guards. He came over and picked me up, and the other guy came over, and they threw me on the floor, and they beat my head against the floor. And then they dragged me up, they threw me against the back wall, and they beat my head against the wall. Then they turned me around, and the one big guy wrenched my arm against my back. And I really, you know, I can remember thinking at that time that, you know, he's breaking my arm. You know, my arm's broken. The court found that the Hilton was guilty, and I was awarded a judgment of $67,000.
It's in the card counter's best interest to know what his rights are. Many times I've been asked when I was playing actively to come into a back room, and I've just stood my ground and refused to go. Refused to show identification, requested that Metro Police be called, which is my right to do, which is sort of becomes almost a safe haven. You would like to be escorted out by the police rather than go into a back room.
The law of backrooming is that a casino has the right to hold people it thinks has committed crimes. it is very clear they do not have the right to hold card counters because card counting is not a crime. If they can find some other reason, and oftentimes they'll say, and it's hard to say whether it happened or not, but they'll say disturbing the peace or doing something else, something criminal, then they will come up, they'll hold you and they'll fight it.
All right, so I started the day this morning $1,400 down, and then so waiting for you to get here, I went out to the Imperial Palace and to the Flamingo after checking to see I hadn't played on day shift there yesterday. So I went there and lost $600 at the Imperial Palace, and just the guy just made every hand he had. I bought in for $300, and then lost it almost immediately. The count went high. They just played one round basically, and then was so digging money out of my money clip, and just having money play on the table, spread to 2 hands, lost a bunch. I won one kind of round where I doubled down on one of those and just stood on the other, and the dealer broke, so I won $300. It was the only thing I won the whole time. The rest I lost, so ended up losing $600. Walked down the street of the Flamingo and then lost $300 over the course of maybe 4 rounds, or not rounds, but decks that she was dealing in the double deck game, and never got to raise my bet over $50, which is 2 units for me. So I basically just stood there and just kind of frittered away over about half an hour. So I'm down $2,300 on the trip, which is about half the bankroll that I started with. If I lose $2,300 again, I'm basically out of it. That's about it, and that's the music money gone. So I'm like halfway down, and it's only Monday afternoon. So how was your flight?
It was cheap.
Good.
The problem that I have with talking about the whole issue of getting barred is that in one sense, I can't help but feel that when Ken Houston took the Atlantic City casinos to court and he won, I can't help but feel that he was right.
Ken Houston was kind of a character.
He was flamboyant. He had a Tootsie on every arm, and he traveled in fast circles, and he played backgammon, and he was a jet setter, and so on. And this is what every average guy wanted to do, and he probably triggered as many people to play blackjack as anybody else.
He really liked the lifestyle. I mean, he really liked disguising himself, you know, and acting as the high roller. And
He was a ham. He really loved the publicity, and he loved the attention, and he he was good at soaking it up.
So Ken became a famous blackjack player, and he got so famous that he started getting kicked out of every place. Right, this was like in the 70s, and by 1980 or so, he was totally burned out from the game. He was fighting court cases in Nevada and in New Jersey to allow people to play and not be kicked out.
he was never successful in Nevada because the Nevada courts kept finding reasons to not hear the suit.
There is something very un-American about presenting to the public a game of skill and saying, come in and try to beat us. And then watching for anyone who looks like they can play skillfully and throwing them out. And allowing anyone who does not know how to play, who obviously cannot play skillfully, and who sometimes happen to be inebriated or compulsive, allowing those people to play.
In New Jersey, he took the casinos to court and won the right to count cards because the court ruled that the casinos didn't have the right to make up their own rules. It was up to the state, and the state gaming commission had simply not made a rule about card counting.
The Supreme Court of New Jersey now said, okay, casinos cannot kick people out, but they have the right to change the rules or whatever. So they went to 8 decks, and they removed certain other rule options and stuff that used to make it favorable.
So my feeling about barring is that it really shouldn't be legal. The problem that I have is that if it weren't legal, what would the casinos do? And when we look at Atlantic City, where they cannot bar players, they have some of the worst games for card counters anywhere in the world. And their games changed literally overnight. Ken Houston won his case, and the casinos went from 6 decks and 4 decks to 8 decks. And they went to 8 decks with poor shuffle points. Overnight.
So how do you do you?
All right, so I won after my disastrous morning. Went to the Imperial Palace again because I figured I was built in for that shift because I lost so much there. But it was too crowded, so I went back to the Flamingo where I kind of lost just flat betting. But that was also too crowded, didn't play. Went to the Bellagio and won $500, and then came back here to the Mirage, won $250. So after losing $900 this morning, I'm back $750. So I'm down for the day $150. Puts me down for the trip about $1,350, something like that. I feel a lot better. I don't know why. I'm down $1,300, but it feels better than, whatever it was. So we're going to go downtown. We're going to go to the Golden Nugget. We're going to go to Lady Luck. I hear there might be a game there. And then we'll go to the Palace Station. It's supposed to be a very good game there. I meant to go there last night. Didn't go. Check it out tonight. See how we do. I don't know. Geez, I hope I don't get overcome with power.
Almost as soon as blackjack systems were developed, people started trying to think of ways of using devices to do the counting. The electronic computers started to be really seriously developed in the 70s. The man who probably took that to the height that it reached is a man by the name of Keith Taft. Computers in Las Vegas were 100% legal. There were no laws against using devices simply to calculate odds.
The casinos were already arresting players who had hidden computers. It's interesting, there were no recorded cases. What happened is they simply made settlements that they basically would run the people out of town and say never come back again. And I think both sides didn't want to take it to court. The people who were using hidden secret computers thought they were doing something wrong, and they sure didn't want to go to court, maybe be charged with a crime. The casinos didn't want to take it to court because they might lose and find that, in fact, it's okay to use hidden secret computers.
That changed in 1984. By this point, Keith had developed some very sophisticated blackjack computers.
This is probably the most famous of all the blackjack computers. This is the David, and there were many nicknames for these devices, Casey's, George's, and so on. These refer to all of the computers that fall into that category of perfect strategy. And as I talked about earlier, these things play better than the counters could ever dream of playing. What makes these things unique is that you input information into these machines via binary input, which is a 4-switch format. You're going to use switches above and below the toes, over here and over here.
Ken Houston gave me a demonstration in a hotel room of he had a computer where I forgot whether he input the stuff with his fingers or whether with his toes, or maybe he could use either one. He could use his fingers if he wanted to, or his toes if he wanted. But I was really amazed that that guy knew exactly what was left in the deck and could use that information for playing blackjack.
Output would come through these solenoids here. They would actually vibrate right against the player's foot, telling him, giving him an assortment of information actually, tell you what your advantage is, when to hit, stand, double down, and so on, when to take surrender, whatever the rules happen to allow.
These devices were starting to be sold on the open market. And these were being advertised in major newspapers all over the country. They were advertised in Las Vegas. They were being advertised in Los Angeles. And this really scared the casino industry. And then there was a book that was published in and around the same period in the mid-'80s called The Eudaimonic Pie, which discussed methods of using computer programs to time roulette balls.
The casinos were scared to death. They thought if people could be clocking roulette wheels and getting an advantage at roulette, then they could get an advantage at everything. And the big fear for them would be slot machines, where they make most of their money. So they pushed through legislation that says you can't use a device to keep track of any game.
And so Blackjack just kind of got caught in it. They didn't specifically make the law to outlaw computers for Blackjack. They made the law to outlaw computers for roulette, but they wrote the law general enough that any device for any game was illegal.
Probably one of the most loosely worded and vaguely written laws. Technically, you know, now it would be a felony to use a pencil and paper in the sports book.
The way they define it, if you could be counting cards with the casino's chips and the chips could be considered a device, how can they make chips an illegal device if the casino has provided the chips for you? Or fingers, if you count on your fingers, would your fingers be devices? Is it illegal to carry fingers into a casino?
One of the problems with the statute is it might be unconstitutional. The problem for players is that when they get challenged, it's almost never on one of these borderline cases. It's not somebody who's simply moving chips around to keep track of cards. It's people who are wired with very expensive miniature computers and maybe using radio devices to radio to somebody out in a van. And there's no question the law covers that.
Sam?
So went downtown, won $200. Won a little bit at the Golden Nugget, won about 120. Went to Lady Luck, won 135. Went to the Horseshoe, they got a single deck game, but nothing ever good happened to me, and I lost $185. Went back to Golden Nugget, same table, played heads up for just a few minutes and won $135, but got some heat. As we were leaving to go cash out, I noticed that the pit boss was calling the eye and looking at me, right at me as we were leaving. So I'm kind of worried that, I don't know, because if they asked him to take a picture, I don't think they'd do that yet, but if they asked him to take a picture of me from the eye, and they faxed it to the Mirage and the Bellagio and the Treasure Island, I could be burned out of those places too. But I'm probably being paranoid. That's probably not happened yet. We probably got out, but I probably should have just left instead of cashing out right away and just cashed out another day and just, you know, hauled ass out of there. But so I'm down $1,265 on the trip. It's Monday night. Not even quite halfway into this thing yet, and still down a bunch, but not as bad as I was. I was down about 1,000 more at one point earlier today. So it's been a good day, I guess. It's been a good second part of the day. I feel better than I did earlier. Let's just say that.
Well, we have this website called BJ21, as in bj21.com, and right now it's two things. One is it's information, and the other is it's a camaraderie thing. If you like to talk about blackjack, you typically can't talk to the person you're married with, you can't talk to your neighbors, you can't talk to your family, because they're just not the least bit interested. Like my wife, it gets to the point once in a while where she says, hey, if you say that word one more time, that word meaning blackjack, it's like she's going to hit me over the head with a fry pan or something. And, you know, usually when you come to town as a card counter, it's a lonesome thing. You can't really interact with the other people that you meet at the tables because you don't trust them at all. I mean, hey, these are gamblers. These are people who they're either going to want to borrow money from me, which means they want me to give them money, or maybe they'll hit me over the head and steal my wallet, or you know, you just don't trust people you meet at the tables. But people you meet on the internet, people that you interact with ahead of time and you know something about them, you know, whether they have a sense of humor, you know, how smart they are, you really get a good feel for personality by reading the messages they posted. Somebody that, even though you've never seen him before, if you've interacted with him on the internet, you feel like he's a friend. Well, we are at a mysterious location in Las Vegas, at a party of blackjack players, actually green chippers from the BJ21 website. We have parties out here in Las Vegas every once in a while that I don't want to say the time of year or anything. I don't want to give anything away here, but
I think there's a bonding among blackjack players, which ironically the casinos have created. All of us have been in a situation at different levels where we've gone into the casino and just been smart players. And, for example, put down a bet of as little as maybe $75 or $100 when you have a slight edge and been treated like a common criminal.
I got into it from background of computers. That's my career. I have to admit, when, max bets are out, I'm nervous. I'm quaking in my boots. But other than that, I play the way I'm supposed to play. When I have those max bets out, I do what I have to do. I'm nervous about it, but, you have to play it that way.
I analyzed the game and figured it out before I turned 21. So the first day I went in the casino, I knew what I was doing, and I'm just a machine when I play. I just, to me, they're just chips. It's like I'm putting out these little colored pieces of plastic, and if the system says I'm supposed to put out a different color of plastic, I just push it out there, and emotions just have nothing to do with it whatsoever.
There's a point of enlightenment, at least I experienced one, when you realize what gambling really is, and you know that roulette has a 5.26% disadvantage. You put $100 down on red, you're giving up $5.26, and you really see it. When you understand the odds, you really see what you're doing. You're just spending money. So you won't see us playing a lot of craps or roulette or slots.
I had taken the $8,000 hit, and I kind of decided it was time to learn to count. I had tried once before unsuccessfully, and I wasn't very disciplined, and I really didn't give it 100% effort. But this time after the hit, if I wanted to keep gambling, I needed to learn to count. So Pumpkin and I, for 4 months, did nothing but practice. We practiced an hour every day. We would take turns dealing out a deck of cards, and we'd play the hands out, and we'd count as we'd go on. And when the last card would come down, we'd each announce what the count was, whether it be 0 at that point, 1, or -1. And for every number you were off, we had this wooden spoon, and you'd have to bend over and get hit with the wooden spoon for the number of
times you were off.
Yeah, times you were off on the count.
You had a wooden spoon zipper.
And needless to say, Andrea only received 1 in her card counting career, and she never made a mistake again.
Oh, because I was never spanked as a child, so I don't know, it kind of made me cry, but...
It was a tearful spanking too, wasn't it?
Tearful.
These people, they have to not only be adept at what they do and good, they have to have a certain personality. And I've always found them to be extraordinarily bright, but often a little bit eccentric or quirky.
We have a lot of very intelligent people, which is not to say the rest of the gambling community isn't intelligent, but they tend to be computer-centric in one way or another, and as a result, they tend to be well-grounded in mathematics.
Who gives this woman away for marriage?
The wrecked out gamblers and I.
There was a letter from a player who told me that he was ordaining me as the bishop of the First Church of Blackjack or something like that. And I thought it was amusing, and there was a gambling conference by the University of Nevada that year, and I signed up as Bishop Arnold Snyder of the First Church of Blackjack and signed up to hold a prayer meeting for gamblers. There are only 2 players at the table, and they're not even looking at their hands. They're taking a shot with their hearts in the pot while the dealer's off smoking with the guards. There are only 2 players at the table, both playing like aces in the hole. Is it all just a bluff? Are they really that tough? See your heart, raise you my soul. And so I've managed to keep somewhat into that bishop character by just, showing up here and there at gambling functions as the religious leader of the community.
So what happened last night?
Oh, man.
Alright, last night I went out to work the graveyard shift. I played the Imperial Palace, won $400, and then went to the Bellagio and got run over. Lost about $200, realized I was not on graveyard at the Bellagio, so I went into the poker room until they switched shifts, came back and got creamed. Had great opportunities, count went really high, and so I ratcheted my bets up and just lost them all. Just dug out into my pocket, just got all the money out there on the layout, and didn't win one of the hands. So ended up losing, all told, about $1,300 at the Bellagio. So I was down $900 for the night for my little excursion, which puts me at about $2,400 down on the trip, about halfway into my bankroll, and I'm not feeling good.
You get to know who's who, and typically people will get heads of teams and so forth will get together for drinks outside of the casino, and every once in a while there's a big party. Max Rubin runs a party about once a year where he invites all of the named blackjack players, and I've been to a few of those, and those are pretty good. The IQ level in that room is pretty high.
I have something annually called the Blackjack Ball, and we invite all the top MIT team guys, the Tommy Highland group, and a lot of the other big players from around the world.
I tend to play with a fairly big group. We usually have 20 or more that I'm associated with.
The MIT team bankroll has varied throughout in the years, from low six figures to, $1 million or so.
I'm a little uncomfortable with saying an exact number, but I've basically won several million, I would say.
Some of these groups, they actually have pension plans, and I've heard of 800 numbers, and these are corporations.
One of the biggest advantages to playing on a team is that you can all pool your money, and then because of that you can all afford to bet more and you can all make more money. So if you have 10 people and they could each play on their own and bet $100 a hand, they all put their money together and they can now each bet $1,000, and for each one of them it looks like they have the same risk. So you can make effectively 10 times as much.
One of the people who is probably more responsible for more professional players being able to make money playing blackjack after Lawrence Revere was a man that we only know by a pseudonym, and the pseudonym is Al Francesco. And we learned about Al from Ken Houston's first book, The Big Player. Al Francesco lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it occurred to him that it would be a good idea to have players at the table who were counting, and instead of raising their bets, using some simple signal, maybe just lighting a cigarette, that would tell a big player, somebody that had a lot of money, somebody that could jump around table to table and place table limit bets.
So now you've got a player that came in the game, all he does is make maximum bets, there's no minimum to max, there's no spread whatsoever, and the hands essentially played themselves.
And he doesn't have to watch the cards if you've got a team, because somebody else can be counting the cards and signaling him how much to bet and signaling him should you deviate from basic strategy. And there's all kinds of signals you can use. It can be hand signals or facial expression or the way you handle the chips.
It's kind of, I don't know how to say it, it's kind of almost impossible for a boss to find out what you're doing, because right then I just told the guy to trade places with me on the third bet, take a look at my signal, and then you need to follow me when we finish playing by doing that. So that's how it works.
It's got a huge advantage because you're betting all your money in positive situations. You're only betting, there's no, other than the spotter's small stakes, there's no money being bet in a bad situation. He doesn't really play camouflage. He just doesn't play at all when the count's bad.
Al took Ken Houston under his wing. Ken, at the time, was a vice president of the Pacific Stock Exchange in San Francisco. Al liked Ken because Ken had a good act. And he not only had a good act, he had a really believable act, because they knew he was the vice president of the Pacific Stock Exchange in San Francisco. He was a person who would be believed to have a lot of money.
The hard thing with team play, as I understand it, is getting people who are good at betting the money. It's easy to find people who can count cards. There are a lot of impoverished card counters out there. But somebody who can come in a casino and bet $500 or $1,000 a hand and get away with it, to look like he's comfortable betting $1,000 a hand, that's what's difficult.
Al had many teams, probably dozens of teams over the years, and dozens of big players. Ken was just one of them. The only reason we even know about Al Francesco and this method of play is because Ken Houston wrote books about it. This is something, in fact, that Al has never forgiven Ken for, because Al believes that he would still be able to do today exactly what he was doing 20 years ago, and which he did for a number of years with no one the wiser.
Unfortunately, this is kind of a tired concept. It still works in certain situations, but it's the casinos pretty much recognize it. They see a guy running around from table to table betting big. The first thing they think is, oh, he's got somebody signaling him.
But I can tell you now that probably of the hundreds of teams that have existed since the 70s in the past 20 years, virtually everyone has used variations on Al's methods of trying to disguise and camouflage their play by using either small players or spotters or back counters. They use various names and various ways they operate, and then big players who come in and bet the money. This is just something that is, even today, even with the casinos knowing about it, it's extremely difficult for them to spot this type of play.
Back counter plays really small, and when the count gets to 8, 11, or 14, we'll give you this, or this. So you want to go back to this?
Okay, well, this, or this?
Yeah, so this is 8, this is 11, count's 8, this is count 11, this is count 14. I can come in. I'll haul my ass in there definitely at 11 or 14. 8, I'll probably won't. I'll probably think about it.
What's really fun is picking off other team signals, because you can spot the teams. And you go to a big fight night in Las Vegas, and if you stand outside the pits and you look around, you'll see 5 or 6 big teams playing, and a lot of them do only hot shoes. And hot shoe being, you come in when the count is good only, and you play through it. When it's bad, you leave. So what we'll do is stand outside and we'll learn their signals. So we'll watch this guy giving a tug on his shirt or doing this, and we go jump on the table before the other guy does, and it just pisses them off. And so you kind of have a gentleman's agreement. Most of the bigger teams all know each other, so we go, no. Or if a guy comes in and say, okay, I get one of your signals next. And there's a lot of under the breath, get off my game, or okay, you owe me one, that sort of thing going on. Wow. But generally, we all respect each other. There's a few guys you don't, but by and large, you do.
Well, that was pretty good. I think I bought in for $7,800, and I got about 13,250 here, so I won $54.50.
Yeah. I called you in. I looked around, walked around the other side of the pit. I saw you buying in and buying in and buying in.
Yeah, the first one didn't go so well at first. The first round, I bought in, lost $2,000 right away. Yeah. The next round, did money play, 2 hands of $1,500. I won both of those, and then I had some chips to play with. And then the count went up, or it didn't drop very fast. Or actually, it dropped and it went back up, and I was betting 2 hands of $3,500 at the last round, second to last round. I got a blackjack on one hand and lost the second hand, and then the last round I won $7,000. I won both my hands, and the dealer busted.
I saw that. That paper plus
that was like $10,000 swing right there. The last couple rounds.
There were a lot of teams there.
Yeah, there was a little card counter party, and that pit too. I guess that was the right pit to be in. Everyone is supposed to, when they get done with a trip, send in a report of all their wins and losses and the transfers of chips and money between them and the other people on the team. I'll do the 12 now. 12 over 4, one other. What was the cut card, like 1.7? They also send in a report of all the play they made, you know, every single play they made. And not every single hand, but like every shoe that they played or every call-in they had. And they're supposed to simulate it, and we end up with a number.
Well, 2 numbers.
3 numbers actually. EV, the expected value, how much they should have earned, won from that play in the long run. You know, if they went and did the same exact play 1,000,000 times, that's how much they should have earned on the average. And then we have a second number, which is the standard deviation. It's a statistical number that measures the luck, the variance, the randomness of the play. And then we have a third number called CE, which is certainty equivalence, which is basically your expectation. When they expect to earn, subtract, and then we subtract a penalty for the standard deviation, for the variance. How to split what the players earn, we determine that based on the CE. So players have an incentive to earn money, but their incentive is to earn money and still at the same time reduce the risk.
The MIT team is incredibly anal. They don't tip anybody. They won't even eat good meals because they don't want to have to leave a tip. They'll still eat cheap food. And there's a reason. These are all mathematicians.
Well, we're very precise in recording whatever we do and simulating it after the fact. We're not necessarily so precise into eking out every little percentage we can get from the casino. We don't use the most advanced counting system all the time. We allow players to make occasional errors. We probably allow players to make fewer errors than most other teams, but
the Tommy Highland team, incredibly aggressive.
I remember trips of, you know, like 150,000 wins, and I also remember some incredibly bad trips where we'd lose, you know, 100,000, have to send for more money, then we'd lose that too, and things like that. The losses actually tend to be bigger than the wins because, like I say, the casino really sweats it when you start winning. So we tend to keep playing when we're losing, and we tend to cut the wins off.
Saturday, been here over a week, and gonna go out maybe for the last time tonight. Maybe go out Sunday, depending what happens tonight. Fought back from $2,500 down, and at the end of my trip, and now I'm up $380, which feels good. But I'd like to be up a little bit more. But who knows? Maybe anything could happen. So I'm gonna go out tonight. It's a little bit more crowded, so it might be harder to find good games. But I feel good though. It just feels better to be in this position than to be down.
There's a smile I'd like to keep, a dream about walking busy street alone.
Alright, getting the spy camera ready. I'm up 9:40, Saturday night. It's Sunday morning, 4:15 in the morning. I'm gonna see if we can play a little bit more, see what we do. Up $940, big comeback.
The funny thing is that any casino, anywhere in the world, tonight, right now, could make a few changes to their blackjack games so that no card counters could beat them. The problem is, if the public finds out their games can't be beaten anymore, nobody will show up.
I don't think Vegas would be as large if 21 at one point, not everybody in the country didn't think that he could beat it.
So the casinos can't change the game. Therefore, they spend millions of dollars looking for card counters.
I don't like to say things bad about certain clubs, but the Barbary Coast is horrible. The Gold Coast is terrible. There are some places that we call it sweating the money. They're just scared to death somebody's going to win a bet.
Every blackjack table is videotaped 24 hours a day, and they'll use computer software to analyze the plays that players are making. And when they identify a player, they will take his picture, they will share it with other casinos, they'll fax it around.
Surveillance. Yes, Nick.
In Las Vegas, there's a group called the Surveillance Information Network. And it's kind of an informal organization of all the surveillance managers who want to belong to it, and that's most of the casinos in town.
There is a detective agency that publishes a book of photographs, the Griffin Agency in Las Vegas.
This is the Griffin book online. We have activity all the way back to 1984.
The Griffin Detective Agency and the Griffin book, they're both nasty entities.
Okay, John. That was a call from one of our clients in the Bahamas who had just identified 2 card counters down there that are in our books, and they had 2 other unknowns with them that they're taking photographs of and sending us those photographs so that we can see if we can identify who was with them. These people were just backed off the game because of the information we gave them.
Many times you're on the same page with people that have been convicted of cheating, people have stolen pocketbooks from old ladies playing slot machines, and you'll be right in this mug type book, and all you've done is play a game according to the rules that the casinos laid down.
We know way infer that what they're doing is illegal, and the books and our information is only set up as a guide for the casinos to use. They do not have to take any action just because somebody is one of our books.
At the Hilton, the way that they picked up on it was that they had an agent from the Griffin Detective Agency that pointed me out. This came out during the discovery phase, during the years between the incident and when it came to trial.
The Griffin book and some of the other correspondence between casinos is borderline, and the casinos have to be fairly careful because they could very easily be libeling somebody.
The rap against the Griffin Agency is that they make errors, they make mistakes. And I can tell you once I got a hold of a Griffin book, and there I was in the Griffin book, but for doing something that I'd never done in my life and as an accomplice to someone I've never met.
They make their money creating paranoia and fear and making it look like there's pros in every one of these properties, cheaters and legitimate players. You bet. It's all about what their business is. I don't think you can get around that. I don't think they would ever deny that.
And the casinos, they pay a lot. They pay thousands of dollars a month just to look at the pictures and the names of players who have been identified as card counters in various casinos.
Whether counting has been good for it, I don't know. It's been good for Griffin Investigations because a lot of people are subscribing to us because of these organized groups and these counters that have come in. What this does is allows us to look at a player live while he's playing on the game. Do you have a name on this subject? And what's his bet spread? I will run his name through our files, and if anything comes up on that, I will call you.
So there's a huge cat and mouse game that has been going on for 35 plus years.
I was playing at Bally's in Atlantic City. This was about 1983, and one of my disguises was an Afro-type wig. When I bought it, it was a little tight, it was a little small, the rubber band was very tight. And I'm playing there with a big player, and of course I'm giving hand signals, so my hands are tied up. And I could feel this thing creeping. And at the end of the hand or this round, I was going to just pull it down like I'm going like this now. But before I could do that, the thing shot up in the air and landed on the table like a dead squirrel. And I just ran out of the casino holding my hands over my face.
Computer does finding the eyes, and then what we do is we mask a certain part of the face, and basically we're deconstructing it and reconstructing it, and we're comparing this face after he masks this part of it, to basically 128 what we call eigenfaces. It's a cross-section of all different types of faces across the United States. It measures that against the formula of everybody else in your database. Might be 10,000 people in your database, and that's how it can prioritize all the pictures. This is the best match, this is the next best match, this is the third best match. They'll put a baseball cap on, a mustache, maybe eyeglasses. None of that matters to us. We find players sometimes, they're dressed as women, they're guys, but they just want to be disguised. The guy up in the surveillance room, I mean, he's looking at some small monitors. He doesn't have the tools to fight some of the bad guys. So the facial recognition is a great way for these guys to fight back.
This is a cat and mouse game that they are dead serious about. This is not a joke to them. They aren't going to suddenly laugh it off and go, oh, so you were card counting last week when you won $13,000 on Thursday night. Ha, Jay. They're not going to do that.
I've been arrested 3 times counting cards. All 3 of them have been dismissed or no charges have ever been filed. All 3 times were the police basically, in my opinion, operating at the beck and call of the casino.
Casinos are more conscious now of their bottom line than they used to be. And the reason they're more conscious of their bottom line is simple, because there's more competition out there. As you well know, you've been in this city the last few years. What has gone? It has boomed. There's more casinos now than we care to count. So therefore, the percentage of win factor is getting smaller and smaller. As the mega casinos open up, guess what? You got less customer base. So therefore, you have to protect what percentage of win factor that you got. And they look at it this way. They don't like advantage players coming in, taking X amount from them, if they can keep from it.
Now, I'm a lawyer, but I've been busted. I've been arrested, I've been booked twice, I've been fingerprinted. And I got to tell you, the first time it happened to me, it was not a barring, it was a backing off. Me, who I'm fairly sophisticated in the legal system, I felt a little bit like a criminal.
Mr. Block, you're under arrest for cheat at play, counting cards. I asked him what that meant. What did he mean by cheat, by counting cards? He refused to answer me.
Now, is it fair for you to sit there on a game and play when you know the clump of cards, the aces and faces may be coming? When old Tommy over here from Kokomo, Indiana, is coming to Vegas with his $100 bill, he's got the same, maybe not the same bet, a bet. Is it fair for Tom over here not to win and you win? I don't think so. I think it should be a level playing field.
The security guards forced open the door to our hotel room. So the police officer then decided to handcuff me.
As soon as I sat down to play, literally, wearing a nice Giorgio Armani tux and sat down to play, and within about 5 minutes, shift manager or casino manager, I don't know his exact title, and a bunch of like 3 or 4 security guards came over, and he asked me to step away from the table, and he said, you can't play blackjack here anymore. In fact, we don't want you in the hotel. We want you to pack your bags and get out.
They then asked me to strip partially to search for any hidden devices or weapons or a computer. Of course, they didn't find anything.
Why did you think they should play better than the average guy?
Well, maybe because they put in time, or they're just better at math, or they.
You think that's fair, right? In so many words, if you're a mathematician and you come to a casino and you could figure percentage better than I can, you think you should be allowed to win more money than me because I cannot figure percentages. That's what you're basically saying, correct?
Well, yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, nothing maybe about it. It's definite.
You're told that if you get, you should try and get as good at any endeavor that you do. And, at blackjack, you get put in a mug book.
Mr. Highland's been offered to play other games other than blackjack. I know for a fact he can play roulette till he's blue in the face, or he can play craps. But Mr. Highland prefers not to play either or. Why not? Because the percentage may be a little bit different, correct or incorrect? You know it's different.
This is ludicrous. Why would there be anything wrong with just thinking while you're playing a game?
Do you feel it's fair to go in a casino and take $500 away from that casino who has to pay employees and management, rent, vendors?
Yeah.
They need that profit margin to take care of the economy.
It's not like that I think that the right to count cards is such an important civil right, but if you're not allowed to count cards, if you're not allowed to think, to be smart, to be mathematical, to be scientific, that's basically what it is. If card counting is illegal in a casino, but casinos will allow and encourage people to use other systems, what they're saying is it's legal to be stupid. But if you're smart, if you go and actually do something that has a scientific basis, if you have a belief that actually might have some power, if that is a crime, then we have a real crisis in civil rights and human rights.
This is it. Tonight's the last night, and I feel okay. I hope I finish with a little bit of a win. Make me feel a lot better. So I'm about $560 up on the trip right now. I feel like I've gone through the ringer, and no one should stay in Vegas for 10 days if you don't live here. Just coming to visit for 10 days is just too long to be here.
Probably the hardest thing for blackjack is to emotionally put up with the losses.
It's always a roller coaster. Anybody that advertises that you can win every time or something like that is a fraud.
If you make like one big mistake every 100 hands or so, then you're not a threat at all. The casino shouldn't worry about it.
People will take a book with good information, and the majority of them will, in essence, pass it under their nose, and that will become their entitlement to go out and lose some money on the blackjack games.
I know a lot of people that think that they're skilled blackjack players, they know what they're doing, and I'll go ask them questions about basic strategy questions. What do you do when this happens or that happens? When the dealer has a 10 up and you have ace-7, what do you do? And most people will say, oh, you stand.
Dealer's a 10, soft 18, I stay.
I'd probably stand.
A7, stand. I would stand.
I'd stay.
I stand.
I stand, personally.
I generally stand. Stand.
Stand. Stand. Stand.
Stand.
Stand.
Stand.
Stand.
Stand.
No, you're supposed to hit. In fact, like if I have ace-7 and the dealer has a 10 and I signal a hit, most dealers will pause almost instinctively. They won't let you hit unless they know you're sure about it. And in fact, that's the correct play.
Okay, so I'm up $920, something like that. And I think I'm going to quit if I can get to 1,000. So I'm just going to, Sunday night, it's 10:30. I've got to fly out in about 10 hours. I'm going to go downstairs, see if I can win it, and then just, if I can get up, I'm going to quit 1,000 up. If I go down, I think I'll keep playing. I think I'll go down to the Stratosphere, maybe go to the Palace Station. But if I can do it here, I'll do it. Had a good run at the Bellagio, and a good run here. So I'm ready to go. I just I don't know, $1,000 bucks, that'd be fine. That'd be all right considering everything I've gone through. I think that would be good. So I'm gonna get ready. I'm gonna go downstairs and see if I can make it work.
take you tonight. All right. In Austin, Texas, we have we teach free workshops. All right.
Most people who gamble use systems that lose. And that's why casinos stay in business, because the great majority of gamblers are losers rather than winners. But when you've got a winning system, it's and you know it's a winning system, it's not just luck, then you're really, it's really a thrill. And to see this thing produce blinding piles of chips in short order was heady stuff, I guess, very, very enjoyable. I might add that it's been a long time since any of these taxis have been seen coming for card counters.
I went downstairs, I was $915 up on the trip, and I won $200 in about 5 minutes, a little more. So I'm quitting the case study. I've won $1,128, and I leave the city in about 6 hours, and I'm tired, I'm exhausted, and I don't know if it's worth it. It took a lot out of me because I really cared about the money, and I was underfinanced and I knew it. But in another way, it's fun, and I'm proud to be up, and I can use the money. Maybe I'll go to and shoot interview with Ian Anderson. Maybe that's what I'll do with the winnings. And yeah, a little hair raising.